We played on the school field. There's a pitch behind the old grammar school, and our bonding sessions were held in the Crown, which was quite close to the school, just across the road from the school. The landlord was quite happy to let us have the back room of the Crown. It was about 20 feet square, no windows, one door. We all sat on benches, and we drank our... We didn't drink bitter in those days. We all drank mild. Well, oatmeal mixed was the in drink. 1 3/8 a pint. Well, 1 3/8 a mixed pint. And we talked about various things, mostly about getting our own ground, our own clubhouse, and getting better fixtures.
You were all
of the ground, and we had actually it got very serious. We had a meeting in the Way Deacon in room 6, in the Way Deacon, remember, and we had this thing, and we voted to make it Widnes Rugby Club and to cease the association, or the formal association, with the Way Deacon Grammar School. And we looked around for premises, and we found this, and we found the prisoner of war hut, which we...
Prisoner of war hut?
It was a prisoner of war hut, yeah. Did you know that? Oh no, oh yeah. When we moved up here, it was just a farmer's field. In fact, it was the field on which I'd come on when I was a young lad in the Scouts, and we used to have a weekend camp. We used to come and camp here near the pit.
Family business of painting and decorating with my father, and I remember one lunchtime driving round in the van to have a look at the Heathrow land. It struck me as being just a farmer's field with what looked like the remains of sprouts growing on it, and there were certainly 2 ponds on the right hand side. I remember my dad saying, "You're never going to get a pitch on here with these ponds and everything, are you?" Well, it seemed as if there was plenty of help to fulfil that ambition, because it seemed in no time at all the drains were drug out, and this old Nissen hut was erected. I'm absolutely sure that nothing would have been done without a certain Fred Hunt, a joiner as I recollect. What a servant he became to the club. He organised, I think, the whole team of volunteers to erect the Nissen hut.
But the ground was a poor piece of ground. It was probably one of the worst farmers' fields for miles around. It wasn't drained very much by the farmer, and the club did do some drainage, but very, very little. But they did it in the right spot. It was the worst parts of the ground was the part of the touchline nearest the club, which is the part they dragged. So they did recognise where the water was lying. But it was a hard, nasty, clay piece of land, and you wouldn't recognise the change that's taken place over the last.
At that time, all the members of the team, all the members of the squads then, were simply working also at the club at Heath Road. We everybody did the digging out, everybody did the taking and taking away and mucking around, but generally we did everything there, and that was ongoing. And in time we did move. I mean, I remember going when we got our first changing room in the up at Heath Road, and I think the game was against Hull. We were playing Hull, but our pitch was only just being laid, so we got changed in Heath Road and went down to the Way Deacon to play. So that was very, very unusual, but you know, the spirit was fantastic, and we still use the old Crown pub as our drop-off point on the way home from training. But the club, everybody there pulled together.
Weeks later, and the huts were still not above ground, but you could see where it's going to start. one occasion I was here, Stringy Whitby lay down the foundations. And Fred Hunt came to the gates and said, "What the bloody hell's he there?" Thought they dug down 6 foot, because Stringy was a 6-footer.
Yeah.
And then Ernie Dawson, who was the bricklayer, came down, reading Forever Amber.
Yeah.
And he saw Stringy's head poking over the footings. Such was his shock, he fell over and broke his arm. That was the end of the bricklayer.
I didn't drink before I played with him. The St Eddie's was a hard game, and I think in the sensible about it, it was such a big game for us, the first game on the ground, we didn't really get our game together like we could play. We weren't as fluent as we could be. We were all a bit tensed up and tight. And we drew, didn't we? Now, the Liverpool game, I got kicked off. A fella called I was on the floor, my head 5 feet from the ball, and I got a boot in my bloody face and was carried off. Because they thought they were going to walk all over us, and I think they got a bit of a surprise. That basically is my remembrance of the first 2 matches.
I think you beat St Eddie's and you drew with Liverpool.
Well, yes, 6-5. Yeah, there's only 1 point different in the St Eddie's game. Yes, that's right. It's.
And what were the festivities in the club afterwards? But Maurice Hunt says that he only got up to half time just watching, and he couldn't drink anymore.
Who, me?
No, Maurice Hunt.
Well, that's his fault.
Have you any recollection of the...
When I finished, I was in no state to drink at all. That game, none at all. I was out the game literally. But there we are. It's a funny old game. Sometimes.
I left the grammar school and then started playing with the Old Wids, went into the RAF, then I came back to the Old Wids, and then I damaged my knee at Caldy, I don't know what year that was, so I couldn't play, but I took up refereeing, you see, and I used to referee the second team games, but I did have the misfortune to referee a first team game against Old Wids and the ICI Rec, which was a local derby, that you see.
It was rough.
And after 10 minutes, I called out Murty and Dan Connolly,
yes.
and threatened both of them. Any more of that, and they were off the field straight away, because all they were doing was fighting all the time. They did that every time they played against the Old Wids.
It was never a good
and
match.
the ICI.
Eric Jones was never a very popular player.
Oh no!
Never ever.
So that was my. I used to
A bit of
referee most of the
Timson's
second team games those days. So that was the.
Yeah,
Oh,
Stefan tackle
right.
on that
It
lad
was-
from Barrow.
Everything went in those days, But
Right.
I only stood it so long in that.
It wasn't big enough, we know that. I think most of the people that I knew that were joining the club at that time were looking for somewhere to play rugby. I know that originally we went down to the ICI down in Liverpool Road to get a game, because we'd all come out of grammar school.
You weren't from Wade Deacon?
No, I was from West Park. John was from St Edwards. I was Ware Deacon. And you were looking for somewhere to carry on playing your rugby. And there were no Colts in those days. You just went straight into open age rugby.
Talking about the Colts, John, I first came in, I was saying before, 61, 62.
And what age were the Colts?
Colts were 18s. And it started by a teacher who taught at Fairfield, a guy called Cyril Clark, who played up here with quite a few of the older names.
Well, it's in the 60s.
Oh, yeah,
It's in the 60s.
it's in that decade. Yeah.
Talking about ladies, or young ladies at the time, this was coming out of my Colts days into the Jed Higgins Nomads era, which would be, mid-60s, something like that.
Yeah.
We had ladies, we used to then, and the luxury then, had coach travel. And we used to have groupies with us then. Or maybe Jed Higgins had groupies.
Gropies.
I didn't say that. That was John Powell that said that.
It is.
But it was the place to be in Widnes, and
Well, there was no counter attractions. Really.
We had the Colts team. What didn't? I played in the Oxford Sevens the third year we played in it, and we'd won it twice, and it was kind of the All England Sevens for Colts at the time. I think they got a bit fed up, A, with us winning it, and B, with Northern teams dominating it. because we were never invited back after we'd won it 3 times. I mean, the only team that I think I've said that certainly in the semi-finals we played Streatham Croydon, which at the time was the biggest rugby club in the world. I think they fielded 13 teams or something, and they were the only team. The others were like Eccles, Lee, Widnes ICI, who we played in the quarter-final, and it was a great achievement to win that, because the day we won it, what you did, you played to the semi-finals one week, and then went back down to Oxford the following week and played the semi-final, and if you won, obviously the final, as a curtain raiser to the final of the main thing. And the main thing was won by Wasps, with a bloke called Andy Hancock on the wing, who had that year had scored a wonder try for England. He'd run like 90 yards in there. I think it was a Calcutta Cup game against Scotland. But, you know, to be on the field with those guys at that time was a big thing. And it was played at Iffley Road, the Oxford University ground, and there was about 12,000 people there. Well, it was a hell of a shot for a gang of kids. We'd never played in front of more than 10 men and a dog before.
Well, I used to play better after beer, so it's surprising. And in the old days, then we used to get the coaches at Widnes Town Hall. Because in them days, we used to have as many as 4 coaches, because you couldn't afford it now, obviously. And some of the lower teams used to go for a few drinks into the Grosvenor before the game. Only a few, like, but they paid for it after, like. But it was more of a social game then, obviously, because there was no leagues. It was all classed what you call friendlies, but they weren't friendly because you could get away with murder then. I mean, a low tackle was just below the nose. You know, there was you could do anything you want, to be honest. Good.
You didn't have videos in those days?
No, there's no videos, no. The touchages didn't run on either.
Yeah. First game, believe it or not, was with the veterans. Now, we were only 14, 15, to think about it, you know.
Which would be illegal now.
Right. And the veterans were actually playing Lynn Cults. But anyway, the game started, and as we found out as the game went on, our right winger, his name was Locke. That's, I forget what his first name was, but he used to be a sprinter, ex-sprinter. But apparently, he'd had a few drinks before the game. Anyway, as the game went on, he dislocated 2 fingers. I don't know what it was, trying to keep his balance or what, but he's dislocated 2 fingers. Anyway, somebody on the touchline pulled them back in, and he carried on playing. And as the game went on, he must have sobered up. He scored 2 tries, you know. Anyway, it was Ken and myself, we thought, it's a strange game, this. And that was our introduction to rugby union.
To pick teams up. And we did, certainly in the mid-60s, because I played in one of them, we went to Hull East Riding on a Wednesday night, would you believe, to try and break into this top game. The other way of operating was that I was second team captain for 4 years, and my job with the second team was to actually take a second team away, pretending we were the first team, because people usually get very upset if you switch fixtures on them, etc. So what we would do is the first team, the legendary one I really remember is the first team picked up Whitfield on a Wednesday night as a fixture when we should have been playing Port Sunlight. So the first team go off to Whitfield and won 3-0, which was a great feather in our cap because they were one of the top senior sides in Yorkshire at the time. And I took the second team to Port Sunlight, pretending to be the first team, and we won 8-0. So they couldn't win then.
In those days as well, we were running all sorts of things for the, as I mentioned before, to raise money. There's the Kenny Ball effort, and that was a huge success, a big marquee. We made about £800 or £900, which in those days was a considerable amount of money.
Kenny Ball was a television.
Well, he was a television guy, so everyone wanted tickets, and you know it was a sellout. And we had a big tanker from Tetley's was rolled up, and the beer was flowing and everything. Kenny Ball stayed there till 4 o'clock in the morning while we were clearing up and everything, drinking whiskey out of a bottle that he'd brought from his car because we wouldn't sell him anymore. It seemed a bit mean to me at the time.
So this was out on the field, yeah?
Yeah.
In 1970, I think it would be February or March, the news made the front page of the Weekly News that I'd been admitted as a solicitor. And the very next Saturday, I went into the club as usual. In those days, Darryl positioned himself at a table in the lobby, ensuring that all people entering the club were members and that those who were not members paid an entrance fee. I went in as usual, and Darryl had a slightly different attitude towards me, which had formerly been a little strained due to our arguments. He congratulated me on having been admitted as a solicitor and asked me if I'd now like to become the club's honorary solicitor.
I was teaching Fishermore at the time, so this was great. And all of a sudden, all the talent in the town was coming up to the Wids to play because the name was getting bigger and better up at the Wids as an under-18 team. And we were getting all the lads, so it was great. And as a result, me having 5 teams at Fishermore and playing these Liverpool teams and the collegiate and all these, and then I had a few connections in the Christian Brothers schools and that, I started getting fixtures with them, you see. And they started being very helpful to us because we were spreading the word. Bankfield started doing the same thing then. 5 teams Saturday morning. Fairfield were already doing it because Ray French had been there, but that was great. 5 teams there. And then St Joseph started up, 5 teams there. And so all of a sudden in Widnes, we've got 5 teams can play each other, 5 matches, home and away. That's 10 here.
Well, I was teacher at Bankfield, and we had we give Bill Christie his due. Bill Christie, who also played for the club and the vets and that, he introduced rugby union to the school. And that was tremendous because when he first came as PE teacher at Bankfield, we played a couple of games of rugby league, but you could only play 2 or 3 games for one team. Say the 4th year, the under 15. And when he introduced rugby union for as I said, well, this is ridiculous. As long as I get enough staff to help, and fortunately at Bankfield, he had lots of staff that help him out with things. And they ran 4 or 5 sides, years 1 to 5, and I ran regularly. I ran the team regularly, and from that, where the lads go after they finish at Bankfield at 16. So we said, going down to the Wids, and so they did.
My time in the coach was spent under a chap called Alan Wilson, who, again, another stalwart from the club, who sadly does not come into the club anymore, which is a shame as far as I'm concerned. But Mike Ryan came and brought a lot of Mike Ryanisms to the club. A lot of good players came to the club, clearly Les being one of them. We did at the time, and Les can confirm or deny this, have almost a run of the schools. Very little organised rugby league at under 19 level. A lot of, and in fact, we did have a spell at that time, and as I say, I'd moved on, of running 2 Colts teams.
2 Colts teams, early 70s, 1970, yeah.
Quite successfully, because we did have an awful lot of players from that time.
Well, unfortunately, at the time, there was demarcation in the town where Widnes people wouldn't go certain parts of the estate, and Liverpool people wouldn't go to certain parts of Widnes. Me and Jeff never even bothered with that. We just every Friday turned up for the drink. This one Friday in the Hammer and Pincers, apparently all hell let loose outside. Police was everywhere, there was fights. Me and Jeff came outside with a pint in our hands just to have a look and went back in. Unfortunately, I was seen by a local Bobby who also played for the Wids and was took to task on the Tuesday night. Clipped round the back of the head and said, if I see you up there getting in trouble, which was not the case, as we explained to him, but too late, them ears were ringing. But that's how it was then. Very good. It was a very homely club, Widnes, at the time. Everyone looked after everybody.
And basically me and a group of young lads got the taste for the rugby, enjoyed the training with Mike Ryan, and even more so got a taste for the social life, because there was a great social life here in the club.
These were the discos?
Yeah, in the 1970s, just the 70s then. The club was open on Wednesday. You trained and you came to a disco, which was the talk of the town basically. They came from all over, and if you played rugby here, you didn't have to queue up to get in like everybody else. And the same again on a Friday. There was another good social night on a Friday. And then, you know, your matches on a Saturday. And the thing was with the rugby union game, the matches were every week. There was no problem with fixtures. You travelled both to local teams and to fairly far and wide throughout Cheshire and the north of England.
Pushed us into the public eye at one stage was the fact that we applied the rules laid down by the Rugby Football Union rigorously in terms of professional rugby, or rugby league, not even professional necessarily. So we endured quite a lot of criticism in the town, and we were considered to be snobs and so on and so forth, but you know, that was the way it went. But I suppose to some extent that was the way the membership was made up. And we did in fact apply the rules, and over the years I've asked people like Dougie Lawton and Harry Dawson, and there was a scout from Salford called Chalky White, and Chalky used to turn up on regular Saturdays and was regularly asked to leave the premises, which they did, and they always took it in good part, you know. They weren't best pleased. I mean, all they did, they walked up and watched it from the bridge, you know. I mean, it wasn't a big deal as far as they were concerned. But they weren't allowed in the clubhouse. And things happened that, I suppose, looking back, you'd say it was quite embarrassing, really.
The story added to that, actually, because I had the temerity to get married in the season. And Chick Johnson, who was the captain at the time, actually disciplined me for getting married and missing a game on a Saturday. And I was really peeved about missing the game when I actually got married, but I was looking forward to the following Saturday, because I only went on a 4-day honeymoon. That's all I could afford in those days. Only to find out that Chick had dropped me the following week as a disciplinary matter for getting married in the season. So I missed 2 Saturdays, which was not really on the agenda, but it was more out of fun than...
The first game was for the vets, you know, so there was Darryl, there was Ray, Heapey, all the names that everybody, you know, remembers from many moons ago. And I remember the funny thing about playing for them, because I was this fresh-faced kid, you know, who's been used to being told what to do by my parents, turning up for this game of rugby, and I could never get over the fact that these vets, you know, they just used to get dropped off by the wives and said, "See me when you see me." And I thought, flipping heck, you know. And little by little, it's almost gone full circle now, because I'm probably doing the same myself now, you know. I mean, you know, Joe can drive, my son. So he drops me off, and I say to him, "I'll see you when I see you."
It was easy, really. I mean, we'd had 73-4, we had an oldish team that gradually melted away. And we had the rich vein of Colts coming through, the second and even the Colts at that stage. I mean, because there were certainly 2 or 3 Colts played in that team.
Yeah.
But I would probably say, of all the teams put together, the cup winning team, although it never played again as a team, was probably the best team the club's put together. Not individually best, but as a team. It was a well balanced and structured team, and it just come together. It was, if you like, the luck of the draw. They come together, they played for one another. There was a massive spirit. There was George L. Jelliman, Dave Herriman to an extent, coaching. And when I as captain asked the lads to turn up if it was an extra training or an extra practice, they were there to a man, not just an individual. Coaches, every player was there.
And on from that, by winning the Lancashire Cup, we were in the John Player Cup in those days, which was at the beginning of the following season, 77, and we drew Northampton in the John Player down at Franklin's Gardens, And again, half name dropping, I played against the scrum half. His name was Jackal Page, and at the time he'd played for England. And again, just I'll never forget that. But I'll never forget that occasion at Northampton as well, down at Franklin's Gardens. And every time I see Northampton on the TV now, which they still play at Franklin's Gardens, and the stadium has changed somewhat, but we actually played on that field, and I'll never ever forget that. It was a momentous day for me.
Well, come 10 o'clock at night when the beer had been spilled everywhere, and at that time, I mean, it was disco music, so it was all your satin and your long maxi dresses and your cat suits, your big flurred cat suits. Up to your knee would absolutely be covered in mud. You wouldn't have had a good night at the Wids had you not gone home covered in mud. I mean, my mum and dad used to wait up just to see the state. They knew I'd had a good night if it'd gone above my knees, you know, it was that bad. And especially around Christmas time, I think that was the worst, because, I mean, the drinks were being spilt over us as well as the floor, and, oh, it was great. When I look back now and think about it.
Busy, the dance floor was busy, many a marriage has started at the Wids.
Mm.
Many a marriage. The memories I have at the Wids is of a Tuesday evening. I used to work, and it used to be very, very quiet at first, and two famous characters from the Wids, Fred Whitfield and, God rest him, Ian Matthews, were probably my first customers every Tuesday evening. They'd come in, have a pint, and we'd sit there, have a talk, and then we used to have a bet every Tuesday night who was the first one through the door. Many a Tuesday evening it'd be the famous Harry Jones, arrived on his moped from Cronton. Another soul gone to his maker. But my fond memories I have of Harry Jones, every summer he'd bring me a big bag of tomatoes and a big bag of beetroot.
Certainly different, I think, because you actually knew the people and the players, and it wasn't just players, there were officials around as well, and you knew them, you trusted them, then you joined in. Now I don't think that would happen. Some people could take it the wrong way, but I think if you were one of the girls that actually stayed for more than 6 months or 1 or 2 seasons, then you weren't particularly perceived as female. You were more perceived as one of the lads, and that was one of the get-outs, I think, where they would dunk you in the bath. They thought you were a friend, and you would take that.
And dare I ask, were the ladies content with this?
I couldn't possibly comment because I was never dunked in the bath.
Please partake and, when necessary, sprint at a fast rate across the pitch. I never did master that particularly. Did my best and see to the injuries. Because injuries, I always feel, are much better dealt with by the sponge man or the first aider or somebody in the first place, and only when they're desperate do I feel forced into attending. But as time went by, yes, I did attend and attended more and more frequently, and became a regular fixture on the side of the pitch. And then people come along and ask various things other than the treatment of the injuries. If they come along with their own personal medical history, I found myself becoming more and more involved in the club, giving medical advice to all and sundry. So it was quite useful. I used to get the odd pint of beer in lieu of payment.
Early years of the squash, it was absolutely freezing on court in the winter. You went on, thought we're going to do ourselves an injury here. You tried to knock the ball around. It was just like a piece of wood. It took about 10 minutes to warm it up. I remember Glyn always jumping on it. said, we're going to have no ball left. That was his method of warming the ball up, jumping on it. However, it was decided pretty quickly, I guess possibly maybe a year or two, that we needed some eating, and then they put in these overhead heaters. But at that time there was no facility for the gas to feed them, and they had to have colour gas bottles camped outside and piped in to feed these heaters and that.
The Wids, everybody knew Mike Ryan, and he run you to death, but he got you fit and fitter than the other people that you'd play against, and which was, for Widnes people then, there was a lot of skilled people in Widnes, and as you know from rugby league and rugby union in them times, they played good football, open football, ball alive in the backs, lots of tries. The rugby league won Wembley, the rugby union obviously won the Lancashire Cup. There was a lot of good people at the club, such as Graham Riley and Les Whitfield, Mark Cross. And saying good, I mean, my mum and dad didn't think they were that good, as duffel coats were in fashion then, and they used to hang me up on the door of the bar, behind the bar actually, once I'd had me 3 pints, and leave me there while they had their night out, and then drop me off at my mother's.
We did form a disciplinary committee. I think that season the statutory 4 weeks had come in across the board from the RFU for anybody sent off for whatever reason, served 4 weeks, and we were starting to get 1 or 2, to say the least, people sent off, and as a club we decided that we needed to be proactive and take some action before action was taken against us. So as rugby chairman, I, for my sins, chaired disciplinary committee meetings on I think it was a Monday night when we used to select teams and train, and players appeared and were given far in excess of the 4 weeks that was the minimum.
To show how the club was well structured, selection, which was on a Monday after training in the old TV room, was run that the first team would give their match report on the game, then the second team would give their match report and push players who played well, and then the first team would pick their team, then I would give my match report and push players for promotion, and then the second team would pick their team, and that would go down through all the teams, which at the time there were 6 open age teams, and in the pre-season training there'd be roughly 55 players turning up twice a week to try and get in the first team.
Yeah, the building committee was done work round the club for nothing. We used to meet every Sunday morning. The same 3 or 4 of us, myself, George Street, Dave Robertson, Ace, and Crack, Graham Riley. Unbelievable. Things we'd done you wouldn't believe. We actually, over the space of 4 months, we dug the foundations to the extension where the changing rooms are now. Mm. And things like that we did, and we did other things that we moved the pitch 15 metres up towards the railway line, having to move the posts and everything.
And drill the holes again.
We put all the posts up over the back on the new pitches. That's the pitches on the side opposite the forward top row where the housing is now. Then when they got relocated onto the other part where the pitches are now, we done them as well. So the building committee was very good.
Cast off, nobody had the same shirt on. Everybody had a different shirt, and you'd be lucky if you had a collar on your shirt, because although the only similarity you had to the first team is it used to be black and red, and sometimes that wasn't always the case, because you'd always get the new kids would get issues with the first team every couple of seasons, and then the second team would get the kit that the first team had the year before, and it would get down to the bottom, and you'd have I think the only thing that was uniform was that all the socks and shorts used to be in because you used to go to Boydell's and get them because they were the only people that sold them. But that was one of the things, and the games were totally different. It was played for fun. It was a fun time. I think everybody enjoyed. Everybody looked after everybody. There was nobody really too serious. You knew the people that were going to be good. The people who come through the ranks. You knew the young ones. You used to throw all the young ones. All the Colts were the one. And anybody from the Colts, if they come through the Colts, they stuck them in the Wasps and the Nomads because they couldn't throw unless they were a miler and things like that. And when they used to go straight through into the bloody first team, and rightly so. But it was a good time.
The reinvention, is that the right word, of the Sevens by John Ashton. Obviously, I think in the 70s, the Wids had a strong tradition of Sevens. I think they won a couple or whatever, and John Ashton basically got me, Paul Bruchet, Paul Newall together and said, do you fancy having a go? So in one season, we decided to have a go. We had started Les Whitfield in the team and Crack or whatever. Trained a little bit for it, and we went to Wilmslow Sevens, and we got to the final of that. I can't remember who we played in that one, but it was I remember it most of all because it was a midnight kick-off. Yeah, it was a midnight kick-off. We didn't get on until about 2 o'clock in the morning, but we got beaten in that one. And then we went to the big one then, Caldy Sevens, where there was teams from Scotland, London Wasps were there, a few other big teams, and that was a really big competition. And once again, we surprised ourselves and got to the final. We played the President's 7. We got absolutely hammered.
So this ginger-haired lad come up, we didn't know who he was. Obviously he wasn't famous then, I think he was only 16, 17. And he was playing football with us every week. Now I think he might have had a few games in the Colts. I never played with him, I never seen him play rugby. But he definitely played football for the Wids. I can guarantee you that. And he was a good friend of Les's. And in about 1984-85, Chris was working as a tea lad, I think, at Radio Piccadilly in Manchester. I think it was Radio Piccadilly. And he got picked to do an early pilot on a cable show. Now, not many people had cable in the early 80s. And I believe it was the forerunner for the big breakfast they used to do in the morning. And on a couple of occasions, Les Forshaw was the weatherman on this show. But you didn't know that, did you? No. He was asked to go down the studio, and when he got down there, Chris Evans said, "Right, Les, you're on." Les said, "What do you mean you're on? You're doing the weather, get on, it's live." So Les is doing the weather. Anyway, when the final show kicked off, I think it was the big breakfast. It might have been an earlier show it was a pilot for, but Les was replaced by Roland Rat.
I can remember though, when the club round about this time that we're talking about now, and I think they were thinking about the leagues, and it was the Gyrobank League that first started it. Yeah. And I can remember having like a players' meeting in the clubhouse here, and about what should we do? Should the club drop fixtures like playing against Lee, you know, to perhaps play a more like a Sale type of club or whatever. And I was totally against it, you know. I was like, no, this is what you come to the club for. I can see why they wanted to perhaps excel themselves, but from a little town in Widnes, and this is our focal point. No, I wanted to play Lee, you know. The funny memory from the game was remember Mungo? Yeah. Yeah. We had a question section at the end. Anybody got any questions? And hands went up, and certain questions. I think we should do this. I think whatever the question. The Mungo, he'd been trying with his hand up for I don't know how long. And anyway, they finally come around. Right, David, what's your point? And he stands up and he went, "Oh, I forgot now." Which was just, that was into a T.
Yeah, he was way above us at the time. I think, as we say, we were playing North 1, and these were all in the national leagues, and Liverpool St Helens were in the top division playing, say, all the senior clubs, your Leicesters and your Baths and your Gloucesters. In the final, I think Les Whitfield got 2 tries, and Paul Bruchet got 2 tries. And it was for the Wids, who was only a junior club. It was a great achievement, and only won it in '76, which was a great achievement as well. And people like myself and a lot of the lads, that's all he wanted to do at the time, win the Lancashire Cup. Trevor Rigby Said he didn't play another game of rugby. He said he's achieved what he set out to, what he wanted to achieve, and that was to win the Lancashire Cup. And I think his uncle, Colin Rigby, played in the final as well. So I think a lot of the players were that was their ambition, to win the Lancashire Cup.
What we tend to do when we used to get to semi-finals and finals, what I used to do, instead of having me dinner, I used to take my dinner with me. There's a full cooked chicken in the morning and a bottle of grouse. And that was my dinner. And George Plumps used to be there and Tommy Law. Now in the 91 season, we were in the final against Dorrell. And this was at Waterloo. We got to the ground, chicken come out, the whiskey come out, the beer come out. And we're all in a boyish mood. A couple of coaches went. And then as we kicked off, everyone looked up and we saw this sign. Oral versus visitors. So, being silly people as we are from Widnes Times, having a good laugh. Instead of shouting, come on Widnes, it was come on visitors. And of course it's brought a laugh around the ground. And as the grouse was going down and the chicken went and more grouse went down, me and Tommy at half time said, we're going to get that sign. We're having that. We can't spell Widnes, we're having that sign.
That was my pseudonym, yes. I started writing articles then, really, if you like.
Fairly pithy articles, I understand.
Well, there were articles about rugby, that's gone on that week, And of course that got me into trouble when I had this argument with Orrell that they were devaluing Lancashire Cup by fielding the second team. And I think one of them must have got back to Orrell because they wrote a letter of complaint, asking for it to be, apologies to be put in the thing. And I said, no, I'm not putting apologies in. So then with that, they said, well, you'll have to do something. So I changed my name to Loose Head and had to put a rider in. The comments of Loose Head are not necessarily the comments of Widnes Rugby Union Club, Even that didn't work. So in the end, they said, right, that's it. Because I had the club computer at home, you see. Nobody else had it. No, we didn't have one. I had it, So they took that off me, and that was the end of doing the programmes,
That was another one. But the best tour of all tours has got to be the Germany one. Germany one was, you're on the bay for a week and playing rugby. But I remember we go to the Wids on the Sunday afternoon. I think Widnes are playing Bradford in the Premiership. So it starts at 12 o'clock and we leave there about 3:30. So we'd travel down to Dover, get onto the boat, singing all our songs and that, they weren't rugby songs, they were all Beatles and Les Whitfield and singing his head off and that, and then the captain comes up and applauds us, saying we're a credit to our club, which is nice. That we weren't swearing or being abusive, we were just having a good time. Everyone enjoyed the singing and everything, so that started our tour off really well. But travelling through the night to going through, I think it was Belgium at the time, I said to Les, I can't sleep, mate. And he just went, shh, cracked the can, said, don't fight it, mate. So
it was a lot of parents with kids of the right sort of age who got together really for something to do on a Sunday morning. And we got a lot of help from Lancashire Youth Development Officer Dave Southern and his colleagues, and we gradually turned what was Sunday morning games into quite a thriving junior section, and certainly we got recognised for that within Lancashire. We also, I was very proud of the fact that we got a seal of approval for recognising our approach to rugby, if you like, for the juniors. And that took quite a bit of work.
Speaking personally, I've used the club as a model of good practice since those early days, as how you can starting it, even though under 9 seems an awful long way from getting adult players who can help sustain your rugby club. I've used the Wids as an example of how, by starting, applying yourself to the guidelines of the game and recommendations of the game, always putting the children's needs and welfare before the needs of the individual teams, I've always used the Wids as an example of what can happen, and indeed now I believe many of those boys who started back in the under-9s are the backbone of the club, not just at first team but second and third team as well.
I think it was about 6 or 7, something like that, and I can remember being taken with my dad and just told to join this line and not knowing what to do, and sort of like being, because I'd been up the Wids since, you know, a youngster, and being dragged up there by my dad, and I knew there was rugby and I knew what went on, but I didn't exactly know how to do anything, so sort of thrust in. And I can remember where the new bit of the car park is now, that's where we used to train, behind the first team pitch, and that's where we had our first game, which was on a Thursday night, because I can remember everybody running home from school, getting there, and people were still in the school uniforms, getting changed on the pitch. I can remember that, and I can just remember like having, after every game you had to go in and you had to get hot dog and something else, but it was always a different mum that was serving it, and for some reason she always knew your name, and you were always shocked that she knew your name, and you were like, how does she know my name? Have I been naughty or something? Or if, say, a teacher was there, you'd be like, oh, and then you'd find out it was somebody's mum, and you'd be like, oh my God. But it was a good time at the club, and it was an enjoyable time.
I've also been involved with the Wids as far as being a teacher's concerned. I've been a Year 6 teacher for many, many years, and I've brought the boys down for many an occasion to try and encourage them to play at the schools festival. One year we had no coach, so I ended up coaching, putting into practice all I'd learned from Mr. Griffiths and all the other coaches. Being very loud, not very good on the old technique, but plenty of encouragement, plenty of shouting, plenty of discipline. And the boys, in fact, several of them, did actually join the club as a result of those. And it's a tremendous way of putting the club about, showing people what it's about, and letting the town know that it's got a very, very good youth training scheme.
I'm new to junior rugby, and you only play teams from within your own county, so you don't really know how strong you are. And we got invited to this 4-way championship at Sandbach. So again, it was a venture into the unknown. We turned up, it seemed like a decent setup. We sort of watched the first game, and Doncaster looked really, really strong team. You think, Christ, you've got your work cut out here. And first up for us was Doncaster, and 31-7 we won, so it was like, well, maybe we have got a half-decent side then, you know. It was, like I say, it was the first time we played a team out of the county, apart from tours, and it was a good benchmark really to say, yeah, that's where we're at. Sandbach, with being the home team, and all the scoreline doesn't reflect it, I think it was something like maybe 10, 12, 15-0. It was a tight game, but I think fair to say the referee didn't help us at all. Sandbach never really looked up so much. And then the last game, Staffordshire, we won quite comfortably, to be honest, and the NatWest Trophy was ours. I think Sandbach had planned a big day, and because we'd won, I think we ended up leaving after 2 drinks because there was nobody left apart from us. So, but the success carried on really.
We had some tremendous tours as well. We went to North Wales, played Portmaddock in the early years, and the team was getting really quite powerful at that stage. And I remember playing a game against Carnarvon, and they looked as if they were going to score a considerable number of points against this poor Carnarvon team, until the referee decided to balance things up with his refereeing, and which is fair enough, I suppose. But it was quite funny. A Welsh friend of mine started laughing when she was watching the video of this game, and I asked her what she was laughing at, and she said it's just something that the referee said to the Carnarvon team. I said, well, what was that then? He said, you'll have to score soon, boys, I can't keep this game going for much longer.
In 1991 I won the Lancashire Cup final with the Wids. I didn't play in the trophy, I was injured, and then we became professional, which I can't say I particularly liked. I used to get £22.60 after I was taxed.
This was in the mid-90s? In the
mid-90s. I was 35 years of age, I think was the correct thing at the time, and 19 stone, and they offered me a contract. Been self-employed, I'd never had a contract in my life. And the powers that be at the Wids proceeded to badger me for all the year, asking me for my tax code, and I kept on telling them I haven't got a tax code, I'm self-employed, but it was that professionally run that we would ask for a tax code, so in the end I said, don't pay me any more money. Not that we got a lot of money.
When I first came here, I'd been in a couple of seasons, I started paying the first team 30 quid for a win. And one week, out of nowhere, was it Nick Beale? Wasn't Nick Beale, what was his name? Beale, the coach, the red-headed coach. He selected me for the bench. So on the Thursday, I trained with the first team. I've been playing seconds, I think, but I've played with trained with the first team, and was so excited that after all these years I might actually get paid. And on the Saturday morning, Spike phoned me up and said, "You're not registered, you can't play." You're with the seconds. He was away somewhere daft, so I went and played away with the seconds, and the first team won. And I never got asked again. So I never got me 30 quid. So I wasn't going to spend it, I was just going to nail it to the wall. After all these years playing rugby, I'd actually got paid 30 quid.
That era that we're talking about was probably 1997, and it was probably the most, well, it was an awful time, because all the lads that were playing in the first team up until that point started to drift away because people were coming in. They were substandard players, by the way, because I knew a lot of them from when I played for Lancashire, like myself, and they weren't as good as what we had. But for some unknown reason, we started paying players. We lost a lot of good lads, to which we didn't get back for quite a lot of years after, and it was really dismal, the club at that time. So all I can say about that is I just hope it never happens again, and we keep our identity as a social club, a social rugby club, and that's all we are, and not look too far beyond that.
For now, you've got to make it back on the base, so
Yeah.
it was finding the balance, and when you're overheads at the start, you just can't get that
In a
balance.
way, it was a bit of the, if you like, the 70s disco syndrome, when the rugby club was probably the place to be on a Saturday night, when we had discos. And eventually they died off as other outlets realised there was money to be made in discos. Pubs started getting discos, and so it dropped off. And to a certain extent, it then fell victim to extended licensing hours being granted to clubs in the town, the opening up of nightclubs in the town. So people tended to, rather than come out at 8 o'clock for the full night and spend the full night in our concert room, they started to come in at 10 o'clock, perhaps spend an hour and a half with us, and then go down to the clubs as well. And that, it's just a sign of changing times and changing habits of people. Yep. But in the end, it got to a state where we were actually losing money rather than making money. And I suppose it coincided with a few other things that happened in the 90s, when basically the club ended up with a rather severe financial crisis.
Yeah.
We were hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, I mean, the brewery said you do that or we don't help you. You don't pay players, you don't have groups on, you get rid of that little shop in the foyer. The little shop that sold our cotton traders stuff that I built, and didn't materialise, so we got rid of that. But so we had to make these cutbacks with the social side, and obviously they left, and we picked up the pieces. But the kids' discos, we said we'd do them. A few objected to us, we don't want them again. But we had to try and raise some sort of money. We needed cash coming into the club.
I can name the tours, I can name every itinerary you want me to. I can name 97, Nottingham Pirates, 98, Torquay, Arabs, 99, Whitby, 70s, 2000, Torquay, stop. 2000 Torquay, Cowboys, 2001, Isle of Man Romans, 2002, Sheffield as Scousers, 2003, York as Chinese, 2004, Magaluf, the big one, we go to Magaluf, Pirates, 2005 we went to as the Bavarians, 2006 we went to Benidorm's Mexicans, 2007 Aussies, Magaluf, 2008 Schoolboys, Magaluf, 2009 We went to Magaluf again, as scouts in the army. So, and you know, these are the bloody days, and these are the lads where it was 18 to 35, but now it's not. It's 18 to 55.
The old scrum half, what was he called?
Was it Jason Gilbert?
I don't mind. Sorry. Got the Fiesta off. Wasn't Jason Gilbert?
Tony Stevens.
Tony Stevens. And basically, certain people at the club told me, because I lived at Teesside, because they wanted me to play, and I wanted money, and they wouldn't give it to me, to tell the coach at that time that I was travelling from Stockton to training every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So they gave me £30 petrol every time I turned up on a Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. To the fact of that I had too many petrol vouchers and not enough miles to do when as a student. And then I really stayed.
How long did you have the Fiesta for then?
About 6 months. I had it for, and then what he gave Mike Watmore gave me a job, and he gave me a pickup through the club, and that kind of kept me here for a while, playing first team, playing prop, mainly for the first season. Then I think as we got worse, I moved into the back row.
When you
yeah, it was travelling, particularly in North One. We were travelling up to likes of Tynedale, Northern, Bladen, all these Newcastle-based teams. Sort of 3 hour drive every other week virtually, and you know, we got going up there and getting beat. You know, if we got beat by 50 points, it was probably seen as a good performance. It was that sort of thing, and it was just the mindset was there. It's demoralising at times, playing out in the backs, and you know, I'd play there and I probably wouldn't get a touch for 2 or 3 games because we're getting battered up front, and it was just men against boys sometimes. You know, lads coming in, no disrespect to them, they were doing a job, but they weren't geared up to play first team rugby, but they were the only bodies who were available to play, and you know, thank God we did play, because otherwise, you know, the club might not be recuperated now to where it is today.
Somewhere Mossley Hill, Smithdown Road, and invariably, you know, meet at 12:30. 12:30, there's one lad there, and you end up going round, knocking on doors, getting lads out of bed, and so on, and running out of petrol on the way back, and getting lost, dropping the lads off after the game, and great fun was had by all. But the lads, you know, for a bottle of beer, a meal after the game and a meal after training, really put the effort in, and it got the club over a very difficult patch, because the first products of the Wids kids had not yet reached open age rugby, and the playing resources were threadbare. It was an effort to get one team out on a Saturday at that stage, and half that team were from the university.
I remember my first team debut came against Preston Grasshoppers in a cup game. Obviously Preston are a lot higher up than us, and I was on the bench for the first team. Andrew Wayne was coach, and I remember coming on in the second half. We were already about 40 points down anyway, so there was no real pressure on me to play. I think it was Al Glover got injured playing centre, and I come on the wing and got a bit of ball, and it was obviously very nervous playing the first team, but with it being such a one-sided affair, it wasn't too bad. A lot of other lads were coming through that at that time and playing. Dave Welsh probably came through probably the year before, Steve Vickerstaff, Mark Field, who were all probably still eligible to be playing Colts, whereas we're playing first team rugby. Matthew Riley, who was again younger than me, so was very young, but was obviously good enough to be playing first team.
Both of those finals we lost, but as a result of that, I feel a lot of local girls and girls from somewhat further afield enjoyed playing the game and have continued to do so through university. Some have gone on to play for England at senior level, certainly at under 19 level, and I think Widnes Rugby Union Club can be proud of themselves for putting the effort into getting the game off the ground and keeping it going for the length of time that we did. It's a difficult thing to keep going Perhaps someday in the future it may start again, and I think the club could only benefit if that was to be the case.
My first impression of going up to the Wids as well was that rugby didn't finish when you were in your 20s or 30s. I remember watching a game where it took people 20 minutes to get up after a tackle. And you can play rugby to whatever age you want to at the Wids. One summer, about, I think it was 2005, we had the Summer Jolly. Moore Rugby Union came across, Birchfield, West Park, the Wids and Halton. And they didn't have enough players to field a team each, so they actually all mixed up, and the Colts from the Wids played as well. And that's what's been forefront in the Wids. Anyone can come up and even have a 10-minute run out if they fancy it.
Sunday mornings, as you get older, it tends to be just the coaches that do the refereeing, and various standards of application of the law, should we say. By and large, it's not too bad. I thoroughly enjoy it. I find I can sort of talk to the kids, and I really enjoy refereeing. I'm not right. I do my best. I'm not going to get everything right. I did my level 1 and 2 last year. I've got to do 5 games to get the level 3. Five games, 5 senior, 5 games of 15 aside rugby, and have them.
Tell George Street.
Appraised. Have an appraisal. Have someone watch them. I was asked to referee the thirds last season. Did I do it once or twice?
I think twice, I think.
Don't know why I went back for the second.
But again, it's the different age groups, seeing them come through from under 5s and under 6s, to come through with them to now under 19s Colts. It's been a tremendous experience and enjoyable to see the young players develop from under 5s to what they are now. Currently, some of them probably first team players, and some county players, and the odd one who've perhaps made it a bit more into the professional game. So yeah, it has been pleasing to see that. Not been an easy ride for me personally, because of all the complexities with rugby compared to football, as I said previously, but yeah, very enjoyable.
And of course they have won the Lancashire Cup this year.
The senior Colts have actually won the Lancashire Cup a couple of weeks ago, yeah, which probably capped the whole period of transition for me, yes, yeah.
And then in the final, we played Wigan. We played Wigan twice in the year just gone, because they were in our league, and at home we beat them by about 20 points. But then we went their place. They showed us that they weren't going to lay down. They were up for a challenge, then they beat us. So we got them in the final. It was a good game, just winning after half time, and we just knew if our heads went down and they were up for it, we'd fold in. But thankfully, 20 minutes ago, our heads were still up 9-6 down, and we got 2 tries. And when we won, it was just since I've been at the Wids, that was probably the proudest moment I've had, because since losing Lancashire Cups from a young age, losing last year in the final, and then winning this year. As that was my last ever Colts game I would have played, that's the way I would have gone out. I wanted to go out, so thankfully we won it, and we celebrated a lot, a lot.
I believe it was the Morgan Cup.
Yes, it's
Which
called.
is your name.
Which is my name, but it's after our presence of the Colts. Frank Morgan, who again is a great character, and a great guy, and I made up my names the same as his. And it was just afterwards, like, there was obviously a great time on the way back on the bus. Quite a lot of drinking done. We had a nice little day in the lounge inside, where they were all in a circle. We all got together. What was really nice, which I thought was fantastic, that everyone that was here came and did a parade of honour as each of them come off and clapped them all into the club. All of the members come out. Andy O'Neill and his supporters and all that. I was with him. They
That's
did
the
all
club
that.
captain.
Club captain Andy O'Neill, fantastic lad. And he had a guard of honour for them as they come in and clapped them all in, which was really good. The lads really thought it was great.
I was at St Mary's College in Twickenham, and one of
the coach is Peter O'Connor, who's now coach, was at the college, and he arranged a tour where we stayed at the Hillcrest. We met up, we played on the Friday night at West Park, had a memorable night in Widnes downtown, seem to remember. On the Saturday we played the Wids, and with a famous Mr. was it Fred Whitfield playing? And I think the week after he signed for Saints and signed for Widnes and come back in the club after that. I think that was his last game. And then on the Sunday morning we had a famous kicking competition to finish the weekend off. The kicking competition was obviously a few lads were kicking, most lads were drinking. It ended up being in the national newspapers on the M6, whistleblowers on the M6 when our coach decided to break down near the Bridgewater Canal, and everybody decided to streak in the canal with the police all around. That created quite a mare and some fun when we came back to the college. So that was my first involvement with the Wids.